Hey folks, this is Rhykker with another Diablo and Overwatch news wrap-up video where we give our thoughts on the happenings of the week. And we'll start with some news that affects players of any Blizzard game. Battle.net is back. Almost a year ago we posted a video about RIP Battle.net, Battle.net is dead, and that's because Blizzard stated that they were retiring the Battle.net name. And instead they were just going to rebrand anything Battle.net related to Blizzard. So it became the Blizzard launcher instead of the Battle.net launcher. Now I had some pretty strong thoughts about this, as did quite a few of you. Some of you felt, who cares, it's just a name. But for a lot of us, that name had a lot of meaning and a lot of sentiment attached to it. Battle.net has been around for about 20 years. That's the platform on which we first played our multiplayer Blizzard games. The Battle.net name and brand played such a huge identity in Blizzard games for myself and many veterans of Blizzard products. From the websites to in-game, you'd see Battle.net everywhere. And it just didn't really make sense as well from a business perspective to do away with the brand recognition of the Battle.net launcher. And then when it was announced that non-Blizzard games would get added to the now Blizzard launcher, i.e. Destiny 2, it made even less sense to move away from the name Battle.net. Now we have the Blizzard launcher with games not made by Blizzard? At least under the umbrella of Battle.net, that could make sense. Well, it seems Blizzard has recognized its folly and they are reverting the change. They're going back to Battle.net, and all they'll do now is connect the Blizzard branding more closely to Battle.net. So it'll now be Blizzard Battle.net. And that comes with a change to the logo. This makes me very happy, but what about you folks? What do you think? Did you care that Battle.net was dead? Are you happy that it's back, or is this just all Alright, we're gonna move now into our Diablo news. If you're just here for Overwatch, then skip ahead to the time frame indicated up there. So first off, the major news in the Diablo world this week is the launch of patch 2.6.1 on the public test realm and the immense meta balance changes that it is bringing. Now we've got a whole video going in-depth breakdown of all the changes and the ramifications of which builds are going to rise by how many Greater Rift levels. Do check out that video if you haven't. But the too long didn't watch version is basically that Blizzard took the most powerful build and is now trying to buff almost every other build to be close to that power range. And we're now basically seeing a greater concentration of builds around the same power level as opposed to being spread out over about 15 Greater Rift levels. This is a very positive change for the game, but there's still a lot of time left in the PTR, so fingers crossed that nothing terrible happens, but we'll have to keep a close eye on that. Alright, we're gonna move now on to our community complaint corner. What are we complaining about this week? We're complaining about 120-second cooldown skills. Again. Basically, the greatest offenders here are Argon for Wizard, which has been the case for the longest time, and more recently with the Necromancer, Land of the Dead. It seems basically every major Greater Rift pushing build for the Necromancer and for the Wizard relies on these massive cooldown powers. And it's all about stacking as much cooldown reduction as possible, and then basically doing nothing, or at least not killing anything, while outside of your mega power. The argument is that Diablo 3 is an action RPG, and when a large period of inaction is the most optimal way to play the game, there's a problem there. We've commented on this on past news wrap-up videos, so we're not going to rehash our thoughts, but we're still complaining about this. It would be nice to see if in this 2.6.1 cycle that we could move away from these massive cooldown skills, but the problem is that they're so strong and they could be worked into so many different builds that it's really difficult to get a build to be more powerful than that without it being able to somehow incorporate these massive cooldown powers. But what are your ideas on resolving this issue? Do you think a nerf is in order? Blizzard tries to avoid nerfing things, and I generally agree with that. In a non-PvP game, where you can always move the goalpost, it's not super necessary to nerf, but sometimes you just get extreme cases where it can become too difficult to otherwise balance around it. But sound off in the comments with your ideas on fixing this. What else are we complaining about? Juggernauts should be removed from Greater Rifts. So for those unaware of the exact mechanics, Juggernaut is an affix that a champion or elite pack can have. Juggernauts are completely immune to crowd control effects. To attempt to compensate for that though, they take 30% more damage, and they move slower than most monsters. Unfortunately, the result of this is that Juggernauts are typically just skipped. When groups are pushing higher greater rifts, it simply takes too long to kill a Juggernaut, so it is more efficient to skip that monster entirely, and because it moves so slow, it's pretty easy to skip. And this ties into something about Diablo 3 that I greatly dislike, and that's greater rift fishing. So for those unaware, if you take a look at the leaderboards, all the highest clears are done via what's called Greater Rift fishing. In other words, you go through 50 to 100 Greater Rifts before picking one Greater Rift to attempt to completion. You're waiting for all the stars to align, all the right random variables to give you a perfect rift with the right monster type, the right layout, the right pylons, the right elite affixes, the right density. You just keep quitting out of Greater Rifts until you get one that is good enough to attempt. This is a player-created strategy, but it emerged due to Blizzard's design. The Juggernaut affix only serves to give an additional factor to potentially turn a rift into a skipped rift, and it also promotes the sub-tactics of skipping things during a rift. So the current issue with Juggernauts is that they take too long to kill due to being immune to crowd control effects, and just about every build relying on crowd control effects to do more damage and to take less damage. Now you can argue, well, you should just build a character that doesn't rely on that, but the problem is that 99% of the game does reward crowd control, so you might not even get a Juggernaut in a rift, so why create a build that is prepared for only a possibility rather than something that works 99% of the time? Now, skipping monsters is not fun. If anyone had the choice, if anyone asked you, would you rather fight a monster or skip a monster, I don't think anyone would pick, no, I'd rather skip through as many monsters as possible and, you know, not click on things and not play the game. When the most efficient way to play the game is to avoid playing part of the game, that's a design problem. Now, I do like that Blizzard added a new affix. I'm always happy with new content. The problem is that the reward for killing the Juggernaut is not great enough for how much time it takes to kill it. Maybe if it dropped another globe or another 2 globes, we can run the math on exactly how many more we need. But if there were a greater reward for killing a Juggernaut, then maybe it would be worth the time stopping to kill them. Outside of Greater Rifts, in regular Rifts, Juggernauts are fine, they don't take too long to kill. But for Greater Rifts, I do feel that they either need to be removed or their reward needs to be increased. But what do you folks think? And to wrap up our Diablo news of the week, I just wanted to show you guys this over here. This is a work in progress of a Diablo Doom crossover. It basically appears to be Diablo, but with a Doom skin on it. Basically, just imagine an alternate history where Blizzard acquired the license to use the Doom IP, and instead of making Diablo 2, they made a Doom ARPG. I'll drop a link to this video in the description below for you folks to check out. Alright, on to Overwatch news. A new animated short and a new map will be revealed at Gamescom. And it's actually on August 21st that Blizzard will reveal a video giving us a glimpse of the new map. As for the animated short, that'll release on August 23rd. Now, it was back around January that an alleged leak on 4chan basically gave away Orisa and also said that we would have a May animated short incoming. At the time, we questioned the legitimacy of that leak, but when they so perfectly nailed Orisa, it was effectively confirmed to be legitimate, which means that the May animated short should also be legitimate. Whether Blizzard has changed its plans since then as to whether or not this will be the next animated short to be released, we don't know, but we're gonna find out pretty soon. As for the map, due to a leak, we have a pretty damn good idea that we're getting Junkertown. The leak was posted by Tumblr user Aku no Homu, and you can hear it right here.
Welcome to Junkertown.
So for those who don't know, Junkertown is the home base of the Junkers, whose members include Junkrat and Roadhog. Junkertown is located in Australia, and you can basically expect it to be some kind of Mad Max type city. It's because of this Junkertown leak that it casts some doubt as to whether or not it'll be a May animated short or a Junkertown animated short, but what do you think we'll get, folks? Next up for Overwatch, I'd just like to direct you folks to this handy Lucioball guide while the summer games are still running. I'll put a link to this in the description below, but it was created by Tumblr user Puptum and actually has some really good tips. Whether you are a novice or an expert Lucioball player, I encourage you to check it out because there's some stuff here that I learned that I was not aware of. The artist actually ties together some real-world soccer tactics and terms, which helped me gain some better perspective on tactics that sort of seemed a little bit intuitive, but seeing them spelled out and drawn out this way, it's just a really great graphic. I encourage you to check it out. On to our next bit of Overwatch news. Farrah's father has been confirmed. So in a comic from several months ago, we saw a frame of Farrah sitting with a man. He seemed to be a little older. There was a hockey game playing in the background. They seemed to maybe be at a sports bar, and it seemed like it was winter outside. So the speculation was this could be Farrah's dad. This could be in Canada due to the hockey and the snow. And this could confirm that Farrah's father is Canadian, and this could confirm why she has the Native American skins, that her father was an Aboriginal Canadian. And yes, Australians, Aboriginal does not just refer to Aboriginal Australians. So in an interview with Yahoo Sports, of all things, lead Overwatch writer Michael Chu said, "It featured one panel with Farrah and her father having dinner at a restaurant in Canada. This explicitly confirms our speculation. 1, that was her dad. 2, that was in Canada, which heavily implies 3, that he is Canadian. And that 4, that's why she has those skins." And our last bit of news today, reporting is coming to console next patch. Game director Jeff Kaplan said, reporting on console will be available when patch 1.14 goes live, the patch that has deathmatch and team deathmatch and is currently on the PTR for testing. Also, it's important to note the reporting system and punishments are very much an ongoing development for us. Improvements will continue over time. We are working on increased punishments for high-frequency offenders, email notifications when your reports result in disciplinary action, and eventually notifications in the game client when your report results in disciplinary action. All great stuff to hear. And that wraps up this week's video. But this is a discussion, so do remember to leave a comment with your thoughts on any and all of the news stories we covered this week. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch and Patreon supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo and Overwatch coverage.